That'll be good.
My name is Carlton Cartwright. I'm the Executive Director for the Veterans Memorial and Multicultural Histories Incorporated. And today is May 1st, 2021. And we are at Lake Ashton in Lake Wales in Florida. And today we are interviewing, sir, what is your name?
Robert Zelazny.
Robert Zelazny, and I also have my assistant, who's been just a great guy, who I've already interviewed, Calvin Posner. Mr. Zelazny.
Yes.
When is your birthday?
19 September 47,
And what is your address?
5192 Pebble Beach Boulevard, Winter Haven.
Okay, and let's see. What year did you go into service?
1969.
What branch did you go in?
I went in the as an enlisted man in the infantry, and then finished up in the Signal Corps.
In the Army?
Correct, Army.
U.S. Army? Okay, and why did you choose the Army?
Well, when I graduated from college, I had signed a contract to teach in Bakersfield, California, and I went to get my deferment, and they said no deferments. So I had to pick a service. My eyes weren't good enough to fly an airplane. The Navy promised me a ship, and I couldn't see that that was a true statement, at least not for the foreseeable future. And my father was in the Army, so I was very familiar with it.
Okay, so the Army it was. And what were you doing prior to going into the service?
I'm sorry?
What were you doing prior to entering
Well,
into the service?
as I said, I graduated from college in 1969
Okay.
and signed a contract to teach in Bakersfield, California, teach elementary education.
Okay.
And then they said my draft number was coming up, and so I enlisted, and then President Nixon suspended the draft, and went to the lottery system,
Okay.
at which my number came up well beyond the number taken. So
Right. Where was basic training?
I did basic training at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri,
And how long was it?
8 weeks.
And what was it like?
I thought it
What
was
time
pretty.
of year was it? Was it winter, summer?
Well, I went in September, so
Little
in fall, chilly. But I remember it. I remember that I was not a very good enlisted soldier. I think I pulled KP the very first day that I was on site. And I don't think it got any better while I was in basic training. But I remember we lived in the old white barracks, the two-story barracks with 30 beds per floor. And we had these shiny pair of shoes that were in the NCO's room at the end of the hall. And never saw him. He was just this guy who yelled into this bullhorn. Come to find out, after I got my commission and I was at Fort Lewis, he lived in the same apartment complex as I did. Cal and I were talking about what a small world this is, but I thought it was very good. It provided some discipline, some physical activity, improving that. Gave me some direction. I needed a little more commitment, so I thought that was very good. Did all the infantry basic training stuff, and then I was supposed to go to follow on with then to be to Fort Sill and the artillery, but instead they sent me to Fort Polk for infantry advanced individual training. So I was down there, and I did AIT there, and then
What was your AIT? What was it?
11 Bravo infantry.
Infantry? Okay.
Yeah. So
How old were you?
20.
Okay.
So when I finished up there, I had gotten my approval to go to OCS and had a class date to Fort Benning. But I had about 4 or 5 months between. So I stayed on with the AIT committee group, teaching marksmanship and weapons and things like that. So I did that for about 5 months and then went to officer candidate school at Fort Benning.
Okay, all right, and Georgia. And how long was OTS?
Officers Candidate School was 6 months, and then when I finished that, the war was drawing down. It was infantry OCS.
What year was it?
Would have been 1970 I got my commission.
Okay,
So they only had X amount of infantry slots, so they offered everyone that wasn't going to be in the infantry either medical service, military intelligence, or signal. So
or what?
signal.
Signal, got it.
So I thought that post-military, signal would be a good MOS to go into, so I picked that.
Okay,
And so then from graduating from OCS, then I went to officer training in signal at Fort Gordon. And so I was there for 4 months, something like that, 4 or 5 months.
okay, and what state was that in again?
That was in Georgia.
That was-
That's in
okay.
Augusta.
All right, and so at the end of that training,
Then I went to,
did you go home on leave at all between tech school and basic?
yes, I flew home and saw my parents.
For a little while, yeah, okay.
Yeah. So anyway, when I graduated from Officer Candidate School, I got orders to Fort Lewis. So I went out.
What state's that in?
That's in Washington, which was my hometown. So,
Washington State.
yeah, Tacoma. So I was there with the First Signal Group. I was there for about 3 years, and then was assigned to Korea. And so I went over to Korea in 70, must have been 73, and I ended up commanding an artillery battery in the 1st of 38th. And then it came up time to either separate or stay on for another, not another tour. As an officer, regular Army, you just sign on and stay as long as you want, as long as you're not in trouble. So I just stayed. And 25 years later,
Wow.
I left.
Well, so, okay, well, were you in the same place for 25 years?
No, we went from, I think I actually, my wife and I calculated while we were married, we had 30 different locations and
Wow.
moved. So we moved all around. I was in Heilbronn, Germany. I was in Karlsruhe, Germany. I was in Heidelberg, Germany. I did 2 years in NATO in Belgium. I did my year in Korea, and I had multiple assignments in the States.
Okay. You said you did a tour in Korea. Were you in a combat zone?
Well, it wasn't a combat zone at the time, so there wasn't combat pay or anything. But we did have the DMZ, and we patrolled it regularly. And while we were there, and that's when they had the submarine incident where the North Koreans came through with submarines into Seoul Harbor and stuff. So it wasn't a combat zone. It was an unaccompanied tour, short tour. I mean, it was the thing I remember most is that when I got off the plane, it was 32 degrees below zero wind chill factor, I think. And the next day I went to the field. And I mean, I was cold.
Yeah, you and the rest of the world. But anyway,
Yeah.
So were there any casualties throughout your career?
I was very fortunate. I lost one soldier on a training mission at Fort Bragg when I was a company commander out of Fort Stewart.
Okay.
I was with the 24th Signal Battalion then. We had just finished the exercise, and we were going into downtime, and we put out an edict, no swimming in the lakes, et cetera, et cetera. Soldier went right to the lake, went swimming, and unfortunately, when he dove in, the water was too cold, and his air passages constricted, and he passed away.
Boy, how old was he?
He was 19.
Gee.
So that was unfortunately my only one, because when I was in Desert Shield and Desert Storm, I had the only battalion in our brigade that didn't lose a soldier. So I was very fortunate.
So
there.
you were in the Middle East?
Correct.
Okay, and what year was that?
Must have been 89, 90, 91.
Okay, and there were no No, no deaths?
Not in our brigade, not in my battalion.
your- okay.
All the other battalions in the brigade lost at least one soldier.
Uh-huh.
I was very, very fortunate seeing that as a signal battalion and signal companies, we would jump into locations that we were unfamiliar with. And I had two companies that rolled into a signal site at night, and when they woke up, they were in the middle of a minefield. And very, very fortunate. I mean, they put in the signal site, they put up the antennas, they had comms up, but nobody moved that morning. Everybody stayed in their tent. And then I had a fuel tanker with two 18-year-old girls driving it, and they got off the road and ended up in a minefield as well. That was actually U.S. Mines that were from the parachutes, and they caught the wind and went down, and so managed to blow out the engine, blow out the front tires, blew out the floorboards, but both girls no injuries. Came right up within 2 inches of their feet, so very, very, very lucky.
Yeah, I think we all need to catch our breath after that one.
Yes, and then then the company commander, whose soldiers it was, and myself, it was getting close to dark, and so Captain Lester and I and his driver went out driving around trying to find them, and went in the minefield to extricate the two girls. We left our fuel tanker there till we could get recovery equipment, but we got the girls out, and that was kind of exciting, because I'll tell you, they were so appreciative of the fact that Captain Lester and I showed up.
I'm sure of that.
Yeah.
Well, how many, when I asked you about casualties, you said other groups didn't lose any more than one?
Well, I said all the battalions in my brigade lost at least one soldier.
Ah, okay. So how many battalions?
Well,
How many battalions or groups?
we had 3 battalions in the brigade.
Okay. All right. So how long were you there?
We were there a little over 6 months. We came in. We didn't go in on the initial group that pre-positioned prior to the onset of combat.
Right.
We flew in about 3 weeks before the onset of the conflict.
Right.
And so then we went through the conflict, and then we came back into Saudi Arabia and sat there for a couple months while we were getting ready to redeploy back to Europe.
So again, what was the total amount of time?
About 6 months.
Okay, right, yeah, you did, okay, sorry. And so just to guesstimate, how many casualties over the 6-month period do you guesstimate for all 3 groups?
From our brigade, I think it was probably under a dozen.
Okay.
Yeah, because I mean it
one
was.
is, but
Yeah, I mean, we were very, very fortunate. 7th Corps didn't take as many casualties as you would have expected. Seeing as they had the brunt of the load.
gotcha. So tell me over that course of time, so 25 years, right?
30.
30 total, okay. Anything else that really stands out as far as incidents are concerned, besides the ones that you've already mentioned?
Well, I think probably I remember when Colonel Conrad retired from Fort Gordon, we talked about his career, and it mirrored mine pretty close.
Who was he?
He was a MI colonel,
What is
military
that?
intelligence.
Gotcha.
He was a deputy brigade commander.
Do you have your first name?
Stephen Conrad. Yeah. And we both came in about the same time, 1969. So we were coming down from Vietnam. Jimmy Carter came in. We had a very austere military budget. I mean, I was a platoon leader of a tropospheric scatter company. Platoon.
What is that?
It's a radio piece of equipment that shoots shoots their radio beams up into the troposphere and it comes down at the distant end. So it's long haul communications,
Okay.
multi-channel. So that was what my platoon was. We never left the motor pool. We had all our equipment put into bays, and we just did it by wire. We had no money to train. We had no money for spare parts. It was not a very good time to be in the military. And then we had,
What year was that?
1970, 71.
Okay.
And then we had, obviously, everyone coming back from Vietnam. We had serious racial problems, serious drug problems. Drug probably was the most prevalent problem when we came back during that time. So that was like my first 2 years as a young officer. And then we have a new chief of staff, and he wanted, and I think it was General Max Thurman, who wanted to get some volunteers because we were going to an all-volunteer force. So we became the Volar Army, joined the people who joined the Army. And so then we went to, casual dining in the mess hall, a la carte, and we went to, you could decorate your rooms, and you couldn't put them on details, and you couldn't have them on KP. You had to hire civilians to do that. So we went and we coddled them to get the military up. So we did that, and then President Reagan came in, and money poured into the military. The services training went up, skyrocket. Readiness rates went up. Pride went up. I mean, it was an amazing time to be in the service at that time. We were past the Vietnam stigma and the drug stigma and the racial stigma, and the military really started to do really great things and really combat ready on all fronts. So it was nice during that time, and then we were both there during the modernization of the Army and all our new equipment, and then obviously we were there during the don't ask, don't tell part of the Army, and so the Army weathered that social program just like they did integration back with President Truman. So we did that, and then we both experienced combat with, going out with well-equipped, well-trained soldiers with a definite mission, real strong leadership from the president all the way down. So anyway, when we went, I mean, everything was in line at that time. The country was behind us. The government was behind us. Everything was in place for us to be successful. Okay. And that was a great time to be in the Army. And then coming back, we rode that crest for a long time. Okay. And that was nice. It was a great time to be in the Army, a great time serving the country.
You mentioned the racial stigma.
Mm-hmm.
Could you expound, or?
Well, I'll give you an example of when I commanded my battery in Korea. The racial tensions were so bad there that right before I took command, we had 3 black soldiers that waited in the entryway to the barracks with 2x4s to assault white soldiers coming in at night. And it was so bad during my time there that commanders had to walk the village every night to ensure there were no problems. And by that, we had to go into a club and we had to listen to one country song, one rock song, and one soul song, so that we covered all the racial bases. And we did that every night. And then we were doing a lot of the training for for that racial training, racial sensitivity training and stuff. We did a lot of that. And then the old Command Sergeant Major of Europe, he worked for me when I was at USER headquarters. And he told me that in Europe it was so bad that they actually had, at one time they had sandbags at the end of the barracks. And you couldn't go to the bathroom was in the middle, but you couldn't go in there unless somebody gave you the password to be able to go. But you know, the military weathered that. I don't know what the key was that made it, that turned the racial problems in the Army to be, I don't want to say moot, but not as prevalent. We didn't seem to have it. We were getting a lot more officers and senior NCOs of color, and they were all extremely good. I think that has a lot to do with it. You know, when you wear the uniform, it's your rank and your credibility, and it just kind of morphed itself into one unit. It was amazing. So.
Okay, so you were never a prisoner of war, were you?
No, my father was. I was just telling
Really?
Cal, my dad was a prisoner of war during World War II. So.
Your dad. And, okay, have you, by the way, out of all the places that you've mentioned, have you, can you tell me whether or not you mentioned every place that you traveled while you were in the service?
Well, I don't know if I've mentioned everything. I mean, I went to Russia early on, before and I'd been to Berlin many times before the wall went down. Served in Korea. I did the Middle East with Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Iraq. Those were, and then of course when I was in NATO, I worked as the aide de camp to the Deputy Director General of the NATO Communications and Information Systems Agency. So we traveled to every NATO country every year.
Every NATO country? Mm-hmm. How many are there?
Well, there were 16 at that time, but I think there's 23 or 30 now.
Okay.
But so that was part of his job was to go visit all the military representatives in all the countries and things like that. So we tried to visit every country every year.
Uh-huh.
My only guidance from him was we can't do Greece and Turkey in the summer.
Why was that?
Too hot.
Too hot, yeah, I was gonna say.
So.
All right. Okay, so, how did you stay in touch with your family
I'm sorry?
while you were in the military? Did you have any problems staying in touch with your family?
No. We were, matter of fact, we were together everywhere except for when I was in Korea because we weren't married. But she accompanied me everywhere, into Europe, into Belgium, all around the country. We had no problems. And in Desert Shield and Desert Storm, the night the B-52 started to bomb, I called her from my berm, and she was wondering what's happening. She said, the planes are flying and they're bombing. What are you doing? I said, well, I'm watching them. I just thought I'd call and see how you were doing. And it was easy because I ran the phone system.
Okay.
I had the phone system, so I called her.
Right. Medals and citations. Mm-hmm. Medals?
Well, I got the Bronze Star for Desert Shield and Desert Storm. I have 2 Legions of Merit. I got the Distinguished Service Medal, and then numerous other ones.
Okay.
You know,
Gotcha.
Meritorious Service Medals, Army Achievement Medals.
So you didn't sustain any injuries, did you?
No.
No? Okay, that's great. And you were not a prisoner of war How was the food throughout the military?
Well, I'm going to tell you, I thought it was pretty decent. Tell you, it's always nice to tell a cute story about food. We were in Desert Shield and Desert Storm, and we were just sea rations for the first couple months. And then the Army got this big shipment of Chef Boyardee products.
Okay.
You know, the little ones that are individual things.
Yeah.
And so they just inundated us with those, and they quit giving us MREs for lunch or dinner.
Okay.
But they would, we'd get these things. And after about 3 weeks, my S3, Major Churm, he got a care package from home, and his wife was so excited. You could read it in the letter. And she said, I'm sending you these things because I know you're so tired of eating sea rations, and you'll just love them. And it was a whole case of Chef Boyardee noodles. And that's exactly, everybody laughed so hard.
Okay.
But I was amazed. I was amazed at the cooks and how they could perform their duties. They could make anything taste good. And I'll tell you, nothing tastes better than a piece of bread with scrambled eggs and a piece of bacon on it. I mean, in the Signal Corps, you eat that quite a bit.
Okay.
But boy, that's good.
Okay.
And chili mac. You can't beat chili mac.
Did you always have all the supplies that you needed through the military?
Well, after the Carter administration, we were very, like I said, we had no spare parts, no money for anything. So, I mean, I'm not faulting him because at that time it was just the way it was. And so when times changed, once the Reagan administration came in and started to bring up our equipment readiness and our trainability readiness,
Right.
and our deployability readiness, the money came and it was good.
Okay.
It is ultimately what made us successful in Grenada, made us successful in Desert Shield and Desert Storm, made us successful in Panama. None of that could have occurred had not Reagan and the staff at that time, the Secretary of Defense, and Congress put assets into the military. We would not have been successful.
Wouldn't have happened.
Nope.
Okay. I know you've had a couple of instances, so anyway, just share with us, how did you handle pressure and stress?
Well, during non-combat time, I played an awful lot of racquetball. That was primarily my stress release.
Right.
But during combat, I don't think as a combat service support element, I don't think you have the same kind of stress that the combat arms have. Where you're aggressively attacking the enemy and they're attacking you. We had the hidden stress of not knowing, because we're out there unprotected other than ourselves, what could happen. But I never felt the stress of anything other than a couple nights when we first got to the desert. We had Chevy Blazers was our vehicles for the soldiers. Right before we went into combat, within a week before we went, we swapped all of them out for new equipment. We got the Humvees in, which was very stressful because we had no repair parts, we had no mechanics are mechanics, but we had no training on the equipment, nothing. We just swapped out the equipment, went right into war. And then the stress came, they were introducing new equipment all the time, so they introduced GPS into the military during Desert Shield and Desert Storm.
Right.
It wasn't what we have today. I think it was old Logmar systems. But my battalion, which had, I think we had 10 locations, 12 locations throughout the zone.
Yeah.
And we moved about every other day. We had 2 GPS systems.
Okay.
So you had to, where do you position them to go where, you know, when you tell a unit, I want you to go to this grid coordinate out in the desert, and there's no geographical terrain features to pick up on. So you say, okay, well, it looks like I'm going about 20 kilometers due north. So you're riding in your car and you've got your compass and you're saying, okay, this looks like it's about 30 kilometers. Here's my site. But you really have no idea if that's where you are because you don't have a GPS. So we were trying to juggle those. But we came up with some kind of ingenious ways to do it. My S3 against Major Churm, brilliant guy. So when we jumped these units out, we aimed out that way, and then they coordinated and just kept swinging the antennas till they got a high signal. You know, it was like, we don't know where you are, we're just going to keep scanning till we get you.
Right.
But it worked out fine. I mean, but when you put units out unprotected and without the proper equipment that we had then, they're well equipped now, but with GPS, but it wasn't available then. That was kind of difficult, especially when all your training is in Europe.
Right.
And there's a road network, and there's hills, and there's mountains, and there's lakes, and and towns. You can pretty much find yourself on the map. Find yourself on the map in Kuwait or Iraq, where it's just all brown, and the terrain lines are spread out like this because there's only 2 feet difference. I remember one of my soldiers said, "Sir, just go down till you find the dead camel and turn right, and we'll be out there." I said, "Okay, that's good."
How did you get along, and how did you feel? What was your opinion of fellow officers and soldiers?
I'm going to tell you, I thought, and I still think, during my entire career, after the Vietnam era, I would tell you that they are the highest quality individual. They have a sense of commitment and duty, and just like the police, there's always one or two that you find and that don't understand people, don't understand leadership, and that's really the key. But I can tell you that I think I had one disciplinary action against an officer in my 30 years. NCOs, probably in 30 years, a half dozen. But again, the highest quality people, and so much confidence in them. And I even think that's true of the enlisted people. I mean, I really do. I think that given the right kind of leadership and support, every one of them wants to do a good job.
What was your rank when you separated?
Colonel.
Okay. Is that full? Mm-hmm. Okay. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think I was the senior colonel in the Signal Corps when I retired.
Okay. Right? Mm-hmm. After, what was it, 6 decades?
No. 29 years, 29 years, 11 months, and 20 days, something like that.
Nobody was counting, I understand.
No, I started my short timer calendar back in 1970, so no.
Where were you when you separated?
I was at Fort Gordon.
Fort
Gordon, Georgia.
Gordon, okay.
Yeah, I was the chief of staff of the Signal Center.
What did you do after you separated?
When I retired, I went to Palm Beach County, Florida, and became the director of technical infrastructure for the county.
For
Palm Beach County.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was responsible for the phone system, public safety radio, alarm system, closed circuit TV, computer networks.
How long did you do that?
Did it for about 7 years.
And then after that,
I came here to play golf.
Golf, got it. Did you use your GI Bill?
I used it for 1 year when I got my master's degree.
Okay. What did you get a master's in?
I got my master's when I was at Fort Leonard Wood. And I got it in personal administration.
Okay, nice. Have you maintained any close relationships from your military experience?
Yeah, not as many as I would like. I probably keep in contact with Probably 24 on a regular basis.
Okay. Do you belong to any veterans organizations?
Belong to the American Legion and the local lava group here.
Okay. And so, just two more. Did your military experience influence your thinking about war, about the military in general?
Well, yeah, certainly having been a part of it, I have a lot more respect for it than obviously the media and some of the public has. I don't think they understand the quality of individuals that came in the Army. When I was when I first went in 1969, I think 80 or 90% of the Army was Category 4.
Category 4?
Which was low income, low IQ, low physical capability, had prior convictions and stuff like that. When I came in, my bunkmate came in the Army just because the cops were after him from doing an armed robbery, and he went to the recruiter to get out of town. And back then, judges would say, "Do you want to serve? You want to go to jail, or do you want to go in the Army?" And they would go in the Army.
Yeah.
And then when the Army turned around, and we were down to like 1% Category 4s. You know, I mean, everybody was a high school graduate. You know, you couldn't have any convictions. You did drugs, we threw you out.
Right.
And the standards raised so high, we lost in 1970, I think it was 72 and 73, and I think in 74. We had 3 big reduction in forces, which was to resize the military.
Right.
And what they did is they separated a whole lot of quality officers that came in during Vietnam as enlisted men, got direct commissions, or went to OCS after the fact, and then because they didn't complete their college degree program, they were separated. Just separated. And I mean, these people were combat-proven veterans that were successful, and so that hurt. And then we lost a lot of good quality people when they went to the up and out program. You know, if you didn't make E5 in 4 years, you had to get out. If you didn't make E6 in 7 years or whatever it is, and you know, so even non-commissioned officers had to have a bachelor's degree to make E7.
Right.
Americans don't understand that the education level of the services, they're unbelievable. I think the average, I'll bet you that probably 70% of officers above the rank of captain have their master's degrees.
Uh-huh.
And I would venture to say that there's 98% of senior non-commissioned officers have their bachelor's degrees or master's degrees. They're extremely qualified people that have dedicated themselves to the service. But I don't think that I can't remember looking back and saying that I was ever concerned about the people that worked for me, or that I worked with, or I worked for. Yes, there's always bad apples, but it bothers me when you see something on TV about a shooting and they say he's an Army veteran. Well, you know, at one time we had 700,000 active duty Army guys, and they turn over every year. So in a span of 5 years, you might have 1.2 million service members. And so a service member has an incident, and it's an indictment on the military. And it's frustrating to somebody who's dedicated as much of their life as I have to it,
Right.
to have people look at it that way.
Okay. Last question.
Mm-hmm.
How did your service and experiences affect your life?
Well, I will tell you that I wasn't very focused when I was in college, and I wasn't particularly focused well when I was a second and first lieutenant. But when I was a captain, I worked for a gentleman, Major Roger McElroy, when I was with the 2nd and 21st Infantry.
Right.
And he sat me down and talked to me at great length about my potential and what I could do.
Right.
And he kind of focused me differently. And from that point on, I just approached everything a little bit different. And I approached my job different, every one of my jobs. I approached my post-military job the same way. And I approached my performance. I'm an elected official here for the district, and I perform that. I approach that the same way. I'm very disciplined. I'm very organized. I'm suspense-driven. I'm time-driven, and I get that all out of the military. You know, and I think my personal staff at Fort Gordon was 350 people. I had 17 full colonels work for me. I mean, so you can't do that by yourself. You have to be able to delegate and assign and things like that. And so I've just approached my whole life that way. And it really came, again, to credit is, you know, Major McElroy was the one who really helped focus me. But I go back into the old argument, are officers made or are officers born? You know, it's the old heredity or environment.
Right.
I tell you that the Army can train officers and NCOs in the skill set, the procedure and the policies and stuff like that, but they can't teach you to care. That you have to bring that from home. If your parents teach you, you know, right from wrong, and they teach you how to take care of your fellow man and be compassionate, then the Army can train you to be a very, very, very effective leader. If you don't have it, you can't do it.
Gotcha. Okay, Colonel. Zelazny?
Zelazny, yeah.
Okay. Robert, I want to thank you for a wonderful interview, and I also want to thank you for your service.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
I hope I answered your questions. I think it's a worthwhile project. I was just telling Cal, my dad was a POW. He has a lot of stuff. He has his diary from his POW camp and a bunch of stuff. And I looked at your website, so I think I'll try to get some of that off to you.
Thank you very much.
You know, to fill it in.
That's it.
You have another interview today?
Yeah, we do. Norm Wilderson.
Oh,
And my nephew, Arnold.
wow. Well, I tell everybody, the Signal Corps' greatest contribution to the defense of America, I guess, was to our own detriment. We gave up the weather service. We gave up we gave up MI.
What's
We-
MI?
Military intelligence.
Gotcha.
We gave up the Air Force. We had the Air Force. We
Right.
gave it away.
Army Air Force, yeah.
Yeah, we gave everything away.
Well, did you actually give it away, or did the government decide to move it?
No, we didn't give it away. Under the reorganization, something we didn't fight.
Right.
You know, we should have. It turned out that the world changed when you got the Air Force.
Exactly.
We couldn't have managed that. There's no doubt, because the Air Force the Air Force mission and the people it was too great. But I say all the time, we gave everything away, and we kept the crap. You know, we kept printing in publications, and we kept filing, and oh God. But now, how long did you serve, Cal?
Carl,
Carl?
4 years active duty, 2 years reserve. I did a year and a half in California, March Air Force Base, Strategic Air Command. Was 702 admin, and I went to school at Riverside Community College for electrical engineering, and 2.5 years in Germany. I did postal And then I picked this up and got a certification in still photography. And that was 1980. And I taught.
And 40 years later, you're still doing it? Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. Well, I've just tried to move with it. I taught a ton of it for the Department of Juvenile Justice and Children and Families. Tons of at-risk kids in lockdown facilities and the whole 9 yards. I stopped counting after 15,000 kids.
Wow, that's amazing.
So it's been a ride.
Yeah.
And now coming back and doing this, I'm really excited because, as you mentioned, the racial issue. I'm focusing on immigrants. I'm going to do a series, and I've got an invitation. Immigrants, indigenous, African American, and also there is definitely a story. I just watched a 4-part HBO series done by a gentleman by the name of Raoul Peck, and it's called Exterminating the Roots. And I was talking to Cal about it, and we had 10,000 different conversations. You can't leave out anybody that's been oppressed. You see, and people keep, they're focusing on their own agendas when we're all having varying parts of the same problem. And because of the varying piece, it's like, oh, well, I'm different.
Yeah.
And if we could solve it a lot easier, that's my opinion.
Well,
if we all came to the same table.
I think it would be well worth the study as to why racism and all those things, the military seem to weather it and figure it out. Just by whatever reason it is, they managed to figure out. Maybe it's because if you go back to the new buzzword, equity, maybe there's equity because everybody gets the same wage. Doesn't matter black, brown, white.
Right.
You get the rank you get, and even rank up through like E6 was just strictly on how you performed on your MOS test and your PT test, so it was really racial neutral. But so you start with everybody makes the same amount of money, everybody lives in the same environment, and then everybody works together. And somehow it just to me and in my little corner of the military, it just seemed to work.
Yeah.
I mean, and I don't know what the secret is, but way back in '48 when Truman, integrated the services and everything, it was the right thing to do. It was a good study. I mean, even the don't ask, don't tell.
Right.
I mean, there were gay soldiers in the military all the time.
With the Romans and the Greeks.
Yeah, I mean, and nobody ever said there weren't any, but nobody went out and overtly looking for them.
Right.
That's just unbelievable.
But you really are right on it. It's like I call it a template. I really want to call it an incubator, but that's not the right. If situations could be set up, but the military, the special thing that civilians don't understand about the military is that when we go in at 17 or 18, or those of us who lied went in at 15 and 16, and you sign a contract that said that you would give your life. You don't do that at IBM, UPS, or FedEx.
Yeah. Well, I remember we were, going back to Korea in '72, when we had the border incident. We deployed to the DMZ with our artillery, and they told me that I couldn't take any of my soldiers who were not 18. They had to be 18 to go up on the line to fight.
Right.
I get up there, I had two 17-year-old kids in the back, hidden in the back of the truck, to get up to go fight with their co-soldiers, you know. I mean, they're just great people. I
Yeah.
mean,
Is he coming?
I sent him a message, I told him,
If he doesn't come, it's okay. We're not gonna get upset, and we'll be back.
but
We've done enough work. Every time I do one of these, I feel like I worked 8 hours.
you know, I don't know if you watched General Austin's interview the other day on 60. I think it was on 60 Minutes, but he was telling a story. Now he retired.
I just wish that you could reach him, so we don't have to worry about him. Did you have his wife on the phone?
pardon me?
Was that his wife on the phone? I thought
No,
you didn't
that
get
was,
anybody.
that was something else.
Okay.
Well, you know, he just retired 2 years ago. You know, to become
is he?
now
General
the new,
Austin?
the new Secretary of Defense.
Okay.
So he was telling a story when he was a lieutenant colonel. Now, that would have been about the same time, because I've been retired for 20 years, it's probably about the same time I was a colonel.
Okay.
And he told the story that somebody told him he couldn't go in and do a briefing. You know, he had to have a white guy do a briefing for him because he lacked credibility. I mean, I was a general's aide for a black 2-star general.
Right.
You know, I was a brigade commander under a black deputy brigade corps commander. I mean, so they were all over the military and all very, very successful everywhere. And I just found it very interesting that he would say, you know, when he was a lieutenant colonel, he was told he couldn't give a briefing because, you know, it wouldn't be taken right. And I thought, it's just not the same army I've been associated with.